Quite a few people ask me what a radio futurologist is, and the quick answer is I don't know, but it looked good on a business card. I'm a consultant and a writer. I help radio companies understand what new technology means to their business. Is the quick overview. It's been a really interesting morning, actually. I have a remote control for my television, as I guess that many of you people do. It has over 30 buttons on it. The most used buttons I use are channel up and channel down, as I desperately try and find something to watch. And increasingly my television is more on demand as well, through services like the iPlayer. Frankly, through the iPlayer, I believe that the commercial services do have their own catch-up services. I've yet to really have a play. But I do also have a remote control for my radio as well. It's much more complicated than it needs to be, because I only ever press one button on it, the power button. And I turn it on, and it entertains me for a bit, tells me what I need to know, plays me some music occasionally while I do useful things like feeding the cat, making some coffee and clearing the emails, and then when I've done with the radio I turn it off again. And I don't necessarily believe that I'm too unusual here. Radio's unique selling point is that it's the media that you consume while you're doing other things. And the ROB, I think, once released research showing that 1 in 5 internet users are surfing the web with the radio on. Now, I don't see that many people driving to work while reading a newspaper. Though while I was in South Korea last week, one of my taxi drivers was, rather concerningly, watching the television. But the fact that we don't like our radio to be interactive doesn't mean that we can simply get away without changing what we do in terms of radio. Connected devices like mobile phones offer more than just interactivity. They offer the capability to deliver more relevant content based on what I do with the phone, as AJ showed earlier. And I'm not talking about super sophisticated stuff here. I'm talking about my radio knowing whether I'm a boy or a girl. I'm talking about my radio knowing that I don't want any sports news, or I don't want any Katy Perry, or God forbid, any thought for the day. See what I did there? This is the targeting that advertisers expect from a world with Facebook and Google. And connected devices like mobile phones also have the power to allow me to turn a passive experience into an active one if I want to. So to get more information on that news story, or to take a note of the WeBuyAnyCar.com website address, and give the type of measurement that today's advertisers expect from other media, like the internet as well. So hybrid radio devices that use the best of broadcast and the best of the internet must be part of our future. But I think radio's strength also is in its non-interactivity. And I think that we ignore that maybe at our peril. We have 20 minutes. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions first, and then please, I'd like to see some hands, because I'm under instruction that we get more questions in here because we're the brighter, more intelligent people than the television lot next door. So I've heard a lot of really interesting things. Justin, your research was quite fascinating. I was really interested that younger people, your 13-year-olds, were listening to new platforms an awful lot, 40 to 45% of total hours on those, particularly when you consider that their main media moment is the school run, which is, so it's not going to be radio through the mobile phone, because that doesn't work really on a mobile environment, and it's not going to be DAB because those really aren't in cars yet. So how are young people tuning into the radio when they're at home then? What kind of platforms are they tuning in?
We didn't find many radios in bedrooms, to be honest, so I think they are listening on, they are using the computer as their kind of hub to access digital radio platforms. Lots of TV, lots of them have got a free view in their bedroom, and for a lot of them the music offering on there is pretty weak, but they'll use that for radio listening as well. So I think we didn't actually.
I think you find Absolute Radios on there. I'm sure it's very good.
But on the TV, some of that stuff there's kind of gaps in it. But so arguably PC and TV rather than, as you say, rather than DAB.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. Clive, you were talking about having a radio app is not a mobile strategy. Can you expand on that slightly?
Yeah, I think that it's the beginnings of it. It's a pretty good start to have an app and be on there, but just replicating linear lean back listening is what I meant, and what we've tried to do and what we're doing is actually trying to look at the mobile economy as ways of driving our business model. So one of our most engaging apps is a game. So it's been our fantasy football game is by far our most used app, because it means there's a reason to keep coming back maybe 2 or 3 times a day and check your team's progress and change your teams. So that's effectively allowing us to get involved in the gaming end of mobile rather than just staying in the music category of the app stores. And some of our other most successful ones, we've done some clock radio apps where there was like getting into the utility sections of apps and understanding that people use their phones really early in the morning and they listen to the radio really early in the morning, and could we combine both? So we've got some really popular apps that you can actually download which are effectively alarm clocks, and they wake you up, surprise surprise, to one of our radio stations, but effectively allowed us to play in a different mobile economy than maybe some of our competitors do, which is like, okay, I've got an app, I'm on there, I'm Bauer, I'm global, and then I'll move on to the next thing. So the mobile for us is about actually understanding what people are doing on their mobile, rather than just trying to say, we'll get radio on there because people are spending time on it.
Mm-hmm. Really interesting. Questions from the floor? Put your hand up. We don't have a roving mic, you'll be glad to know. You just have to shout a bit. But do stick your hand up so that I can see it. There's a question at the front. Thank you, sir. If you wouldn't mind saying who you are as well, that would be great.
Shall I wait for it? Oh no, I'll go.
No, don't wait for a mic, because there isn't one. The television has stolen them.
Richard Silman from Ipsos. So I won't ask the Ipsos people. Margot, I particularly liked the charts that you were showing about share of ear. It's fascinating for me watching how my 16-year-old son and 19-year-old daughter have used radio listening and their consumption of music as they've moved through their teenage years. And one of the charts you reflected back to radio listening 2000 to 2010, but they weren't the same group of people, no. But they were people 10 years on. What I'm interested in actually is, you know, as their music consumption changes and as their peer groups become even more important to them in terms of how they relate to them, etc., and also how their use of technology develops, and Clive, I think this is very much to your point in terms of how they're using the various applications. Are you thinking of undertaking any research where you would continuously monitor them as they move through their teenage years, just to look at how that actually does impact on them and how their consumption does change as they're using those applications?
I wish we could, but we won't. I think the money to do that. It would be fascinating. I mean, that was, that's the big question: is it a, what is the longitudinal effect within a group? And that would be a great study to do. I think it probably costs more money than any of us could afford as an industry or as an individual broadcaster, for sure. But it would. We have to do the best proxy we can, which is just sort of look at cohort groups and see how it seems to be changing over time with them. But it would be fascinating to follow the same group of people and see how they move.
Even Justin, if we did it on a qualitative basis.
Yeah, we could. You could follow people through, and use some different techniques to kind of let them tell their stories about things.
Margot, is your share of ear research available?
Yes, it is. Yeah, we normally do.
How would we all find out about that? How would we all download it?
I haven't published it on anywhere, but I'm happy to share it. We shared it more widely last year. This year, actually, for the most part, it's business as usual, as you would expect. It's we're kind of doing it on a yearly basis, so it's not great shakes different, except for the younger group, because we changed it a bit and allowed them to include things like YouTube. So that was the big difference for this year, but I'm happy to share it.
I believe there's a spangly new BBC Radio blog that I'm sure that you could...
yes, it might have been on there, but anyway,
that's true. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. More questions? There's another question at the front here.
Thanks. Jerry Hill at Rayjob. Firstly, I just compliment Ipsos on a very good look into the future, aggregating everything that's been said. It's been a pretty good summary as to the opportunity and challenges. Clive, just a question, I suppose, about related to youth and related to the digital world. The sort of landing lights of the digital environment have been switched on brightly for radio over the last couple of years. And the trend of the sort of migration of youth towards non-radio listening, sort of non-radio audio listening, has been pretty consistent for some time. What role are you using social media for in re-engaging that audience and getting radio talked about as a marketing driver to reconnect that youth? Because I feel very optimistic, actually, in a way, that as the creative brain of the industry begins to fully understand how to leverage the digital world, it can bring itself back into view for that youth audience. And I'm just interested as to how Absolute is actually using, talk about radio in a way to connect it.
I mean, social media is hugely important, and my experience in the last couple of years is that where radio groups have a younger profile, they've had more engagement. And so if you look at success amongst sort of KISS and Galaxy, for example, they've been incredibly successful in terms of having a conversation socially with their community on that platform. Interesting with adults, although consumption of social media amongst adults is very high amongst their friends, but evidence of my eyes is showing me that adults are a little bit less likely to engage with third parties so far on social media. And so you look at just purely the engagement of the like button and the way that people will be receive messages and whether they see them as spam or not, whereas young people definitely are much more open. So that's been interesting when you look at the trajectory there. So at Absolute, we're actually trying to learn about how to have a dialogue with that community. It very much is a dialogue and a conversation. I think typically broadcasters like to broadcast, and therefore that's the mistake that we can all make, just putting lots of broadcast messages onto another platform. Oh, and here we are, another platform. The thing that's been most effective for us was our widget strategy. It was saying, okay, what can we, other than a conversation, other than trying to understand what everybody's trying to understand inside these walled gardens, what could we bring to that walled garden that would really add value? And we decided that was listen. That was the ability to you're spending a significant amount of time on your profile, you would like to be able to bring our listening experience to it. So by building an application that allows people to listen whilst inside that walled garden was something that actually started by Virgin Radio before Absolute Radio, and we've very much embraced that, and it's become incredibly popular. I say over 100,000 people now using that to listen to Absolute Radio, whereas before it was very much, no, close Facebook and come back to our site, because that's the only place you can pop our player, because we want you to see our lovely, beautiful display advertising, which that's something that you can no longer assume that people will do. So they're really the two key things. I mean, what we are understanding is that there's so much change happening socially all the time now when social media is embracing that. So the key learns are to understand not to broadcast and have that conversation. I think the most effective brands so far have been the younger ones that have done that, partly because of consumption, KISS and Galaxies. And then actually look at what value you can add to that social experience in terms of bringing your content into an environment where they're spending increasing amount of their time. If you look at Mark Zuckerberg's presentation on Facebook last night, he talked about young consumers not actually having email addresses and just saying, no, I don't have an email address, I'll get all my messages through Facebook. And that's what he claimed inspired him to build the new Facebook product that launches this week. And I think that may be a slight exaggeration, but I can see where he's coming from. So much time spent inside those walled gardens, we have to work out ways of actually conversing with those communities.